The voice in the wreckage. James walked slowly through the ruins. Smoke still rose from the broken buildings. This place had been attacked days ago, maybe weeks. He wasn't sure. All he knew was, it was quiet now. Too quiet. He had come here looking for spare parts for his ship, nothing more. But something made him stop. A sound. Faint, like a whisper. Help. James turned sharply. He stood still, listening. The wind blew dust across his boots. Maybe it was his mind playing tricks on him. Maybe not. Please. Help. There it was again. He followed the voice, moving through cracked walls and scattered metal. His boots crunched on broken glass. Then he saw it. A half-buried cargo container crushed on one side. The door was bent and barely open. James pulled out his flashlight. The beam shone into the dark container. At first, he saw nothing. Then, movement. Figure shifted in the shadows, thin, weak, not human. James stepped closer. "Hello?" he said softly. "Can you hear me?" There was silence. Then a voice, dry and trembling. "My children. They need food. Please." James stepped into the container. What he saw made him freeze. An alien woman lay on the floor, holding two small children close to her body. She looked thin, her skin pale and bruised. Her clothes were torn. One child clung to her arm and the other was breathing shallowly, his eyes barely open. "They haven't eaten." "In days," she whispered. James knelt beside them. "I have food. I can help." The woman's eyes widened. Don't hurt them." "I'm not here to hurt anyone," James said. "I'm human. My name is James. I just want to help." The little girl slowly lifted her head. Her cheeks were hollow, eyes too big for her face. The boy didn't move. James quickly opened his bag and pulled out protein bars and a water bottle. "Start with small bites," he said, handing her the food. "Let them drink slowly." The woman took it with shaking hands. She broke the bar into pieces and helped the girl eat. The boy couldn't lift his hand. James knelt by him and gently tilted the water bottle to his lips. "Easy. There you go." The woman looked at James with tired, hopeful eyes. Why would you help me?" "Because no one else did," James said. She nodded, then lowered her head. "They left us here, my own kind. Said we were a burden. They ran when the soldiers came." James looked around. The place had been burned, looted. It wasn't just war. It was a massacre. "You can't stay here," James said. "It's not safe." "I have nowhere else to go," she said. "I don't even know what day it is." James stood. "Then come with me. I have a shelter just outside this area. It's warm. There's food." The woman hesitated. "We'll slow you down." "I don't care. You're not staying in this graveyard." Slowly she stood. Her legs wobbled, but she held her children close. James helped support her. As they stepped outside the container, the little boy suddenly stopped walking. He coughed, then he collapsed. "No!" the woman cried, falling beside him. "Please, he's too weak." James dropped to his knees and checked the boy's pulse. Faint, but still there. "I have a med kit," James said quickly. "We can still save him, but we have to move. Now." The woman looked at James, her eyes filled with tears. "If he dies, I die." James looked into her eyes, then at the children. "No one else may care," he said. "But I do." He lifted the boy into his arms. "Let's go." The woman followed, holding her daughter. Step by step they left the wreckage behind, but James didn't know. Someone was watching them from the shadows. A family with no name James pushed open the metal door to his shelter. It was an old bunker built beneath a hill, hidden by trees and dirt. Inside the lights flickered, but it was warm and dry. He laid the alien boy gently on a soft mat. The boy's breathing was shallow. His skin looked even paler than before. The alien woman knelt beside her son, her hands shaking. Is he? He's still alive, James said. But he needs rest. And medicine. James opened a small box marked Emergency Medical Kit and injected the boy with a mild stimulant and fluid patch. This will help, he said. He's just too weak right now. The little girl held her mother's arm tightly, looking around with wide, frightened eyes. She had never seen a human home before, especially not one like this. James brought a blanket and gently wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. You're safe here, he said softly. The alien woman looked up at him. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't even know my name. James gave a soft smile. Then tell me. She looked away. I don't have one. What do you mean? My name was erased by my people, she said. They called me cursed. When I couldn't give more children, they cast me out. James felt a cold anger rise in his chest. That's horrible. She nodded. I was just the woman. My children, they never got names either. If you are born weak or unwanted, you are nothing to them. Silence filled the bunker for a moment. James looked at the children. Then let's change that. The woman looked confused. Change what? Your story, your names, your future, he said. The girl gave a small smile for the first time and tugged at James's sleeve. Can I have a name? James smiled back. Yes, you can. He looked at the little girl. How about Luma? It means light in an old human language. Luma nodded quickly. Luma, I like it. James then looked at the boy, still unconscious. And your brother, we'll call him Relo. It sounds strong. The mother placed her hand over her heart. Luma, Relo. And what about you? James asked. She paused, then whispered, Call me Sarah. James nodded. Sarah, Luma, Relo. You're not just a burden anymore. You're a family. For the first time, Sarah smiled. Later that night, after the children had eaten and slept, James stepped outside to check the perimeter. The forest was silent, cold. His security drone buzzed softly overhead, but something felt wrong. He noticed a shape carved into the dirt by his bunker door, a symbol. Sharp lines. Red color. It looked like it had been scratched with claws. James crouched down. The lines weren't random, it was a warning, or worse, a mark. He quickly erased it and scanned the trees. No movement. When he went back inside, Sarah looked up. You're worried. He nodded. Someone came while we were sleeping. They left a sign. Sarah's face turned pale. What does it mean? He asked. It's a hunter's mark, she whispered. They're tracking me. Your tribe? She nodded slowly. They see me as a shame. They want to erase me. Forever. If they know I survived, they'll come to finish it. James clenched his fists. They'll have to go through me first. Sarah's eyes widened. You'd fight them? For me? I don't leave people behind, he said. She stared at him, silent for a long time. No one has ever said that to me, she said. Not even once in my life. James turned on the security alarms and checked the door lock twice. They won't hurt you again, he said. But deep down, he wasn't sure. Because whatever was out there, it wasn't finished yet, and it had already found them. What she was escaping from, James stayed up all night. His eyes scanned every movement outside the shelter. The forest was silent, but he knew silence could be dangerous. Inside, Sarah held her children close as they slept. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. When morning came, James made a small breakfast, some rehydrated fruits, protein slices, and warm tea. Luma ate quietly beside her mother. Rilo, still weak, managed a few sips. Why would your people send hunters after you? James finally asked. Sarah was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Because I disobeyed." James frowned. "Disobeyed what?" "Our law. Our tradition," she whispered. "In our society, a woman must bear strong children or be left behind. I gave birth to Relo and Luma, but Relo was born weak, and I couldn't carry more." James sat still, listening. "I begged for mercy," Sarah continued. "But my mate rejected me. The elders said I was broken, useless, shameful." She looked at her sleeping son. "They called my children trash." James's jaw tightened. "They locked me and my children inside a food crate," she said, her voice low and trembling. "Left us behind during the last evacuation. Said it was better that way." "You were meant to die," James said. She nodded. "Yes," quietly. "Forgotten." James leaned forward. "Not anymore. You're not trash. You're not forgotten. Not while I'm here." Sarah looked at him. "But now they'll come for you too." James shrugged. "Let them try." That night, the storm came. Rain fell hard against the shelter roof. Thunder cracked the sky. James was checking the outer cameras when he noticed movement. 3 heat signatures in the woods. Moving slow. Quiet. Hunting. He grabbed his blaster and turned to Sarah. "Take the kids and hide in the back room. Lock the door." She didn't argue. James shut off the main lights and went to the narrow hallway near the entrance. He crouched behind cover and waited. The sound came, claws scraping against metal. Then a voice, low, raspy, alien. "She is ours. The shame must die." Another voice replied, "And the human with her." James gritted his teeth. He pressed the button on his wrist control, activating the defensive grid. Outside, the hidden traps lit up. Short-range shocks and stun mines. "Crack," one of the intruders screamed. Another hissed and rolled into cover. But then, silence. James waited. A few minutes later, smoke began to pour under the door. Something burned through the seal. "They're inside," he whispered. A tall shadow entered the hallway. Sharp armor. Glowing red eyes. "You dare protect her, human?" The creature growled. James didn't answer. He fired. The blaster hit the hunter in the chest, knocking him back. But the alien roared and leapt forward. They clashed. James ducked, rolled, and fired again, this time at the leg. The hunter stumbled. Another figure entered behind the first, thinner, faster, a blade in its hand. James was outnumbered, but he wasn't alone. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the side door. Sarah appeared holding one of James's old rifles. "Get away from him," she shouted and fired. The thin attacker fell. The first hunter turned in shock. James didn't waste the chance. One final shot, right between the eyes. The hunter fell. Silence. James was bleeding from the arm. Sarah rushed to him, dropping the gun. "You're hurt." "I've had worse," he muttered, smiling weakly. "You saved me." She shook her head. "You saved me." Again. They sat in silence, surrounded by smoke and sparks. Luma and Relo peeked from the hallway. The girl ran and hugged James. "You didn't let the monsters take us." James held her tight. "Never." Later, as they cleaned the mess, James looked at Sarah. "You don't have to run anymore," he said. "But we'll need to be ready. They might send more." Sarah nodded. "Then I'll fight. I'm not weak anymore." James smiled. "That's the spirit." And outside, hidden in the trees, a fourth hunter watched and ran back into the night. The danger wasn't over, but neither was their fight. Fight or flight rain dripped from the ceiling vents. The battle was over, for now. James cleaned his wounds in silence. Sarah sat near the heater, holding Relo in her arms while Luma drew quietly on the floor using a piece of chalk James had found in storage. But the silence was not peace. It was the calm before the next storm. James studied the surveillance footage. He rewound the night's attack, watching again. 3 hunters entered. 2 were killed. 1 had disappeared. He had missed the last one. We have to move, James said, voice low. Sarah looked up quickly. Move? Where? They'll return, not with claws and knives next time, with fire, with numbers. But this shelter won't hold against an army. Sarah looked down at her children. Where can we go? No one will take us, not even other humans. James paused, then opened a locked drawer. Inside lay a folded map. He spread it across the table. There's an old outpost, he said, pointing. Deep in the mountains, it was built during the early colony days. Solar-powered, hidden. No one goes there anymore. Will it be safe? Sarah asked. It has walls, shields, water, food, and no one watching. She looked into his eyes. And you'll come with us? James raised an eyebrow. Do you really think I'd let you go alone? Sarah blinked back tears. Then we leave tonight. By evening, the family was ready. James packed supplies, medicine, food, weapons. Sarah helped wrap Luma in a thick coat. Rilo, now stronger, clung to his mother's side. The wind howled outside and dark clouds covered the moon. James opened the hidden hatch in the shelter floor. Beneath it, an old tunnel stretched out, carved during the last war. It would lead them halfway to the mountain path. They walked in silence. The tunnel echoed with every step. Luma whispered stories to her brother, trying to keep him calm. James led, flashlight in hand, always checking the shadows. After an hour, they stopped to rest. James scanned the map again. Sarah sat beside him. You saved us again, she whispered. You saved me too, he replied. Back there, with the rifle. I didn't even know you could shoot. She smiled faintly. I never had to. Until you gave me something to protect. James looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood. We keep moving. They exited the tunnel just before dawn. The mountains loomed in the distance, blue and cold. But James smiled. They were close. But then, the sound. A sharp hiss. A rumble above them in the sky. A ship, low and fast. Black metal. No lights. Sarah's eyes widened. They found us. Get to the trees, James shouted. The ship fired. A blast struck the ground behind them. Dust and fire filled the air. James grabbed Rilo and ran. Sarah took Luma's hand and followed, stumbling through branches and mud. The ship circled around, scanning. James led them into a narrow canyon, hidden by tall rocks. They ducked under a cliff ledge. The ship passed overhead again, but didn't see them, for now. We can't outrun a ship, Sarah said, breathless. We don't have to, James replied. Just delay it. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small device, a signal jammer. He turned it on. The ship blinked, twisted, and drifted. Now they can't track us, he said. But we need to reach the outpost before the battery dies. How far? Sarah asked. 2 hours, maybe less. They didn't stop again. Finally, as the sun rose, the outpost came into view, hidden beneath a rocky hill, covered in vines and dirt. The entrance was easy to miss. James tapped in the old access code. The door creaked open with a hiss. Inside, it was quiet, dark, but safe. James powered the place up. Lights flickered on, air systems hummed to life. He checked the cameras. No signs of the ship. Yet. Sarah sat with her children near a heating unit. Luma held her mother's hand. Rilo stared at the walls in wonder. This place is ours? Luma asked. James smiled. For now, yes. Sarah looked around. No one will come here? James's smile faded. They'll come. Eventually, but this time we'll be ready. She stood beside him. You don't have to stay, James. You've already done more than anyone. James looked at her. Really looked. You don't get it, he said. You're not a burden. You're not a mission. You're family now. Sarah blinked, stunned. And outside, in the woods, a red light blinked to life. The final hunter had called for help, and it was already on the way. The last stand. The old outpost hummed softly. Lights flickered on the walls. The place felt alive again, like it was waking from a long sleep. James stood near the window, watching the horizon. The forest below was still, but he could feel it. They were coming. Inside, Sarah gave the children warm broth. Luma giggled softly at the way the heater made steam dance in the air. Raylo clutched his blanket and looked around with sleepy eyes. For the first time in weeks, they looked like normal children. James didn't want to break that peace, but he had to prepare. He walked to the command room. The screen showed camera feeds, motion sensors, heat maps, external gates. One red dot. Blinked, then another, then 5 more. "They've found us," he said under his breath. Sarah entered quietly. "It's time, isn't it?" James nodded. "We have an hour, maybe less." Sarah took a deep breath. "Tell me what to do." "No," James said. "Take the children and hide in the lower chamber. Lock the blast door. Don't open it unless I come myself." Sarah didn't move. "I won't leave you alone." James looked at her. "If something happens to me, they'll need you." She wanted to argue, but deep inside she knew he was right. "Promise me," she whispered. James placed his hand over hers. "I'll come back." The outpost had weapons, old but still working. James activated the external defenses, turret guns, pulse fences, heat traps. He armed himself with a plasma rifle and a small sidearm. On his wrist, he wore a pulse shield that could take a few hits, just a few. Then he waited. They came just before sunset, dark shapes moving like shadows. Hunters, 10 of them, fast, silent, deadly. They moved through the trees, scanning the area. But when they crossed the first trap, it exploded in a burst of fire. 2 went down screaming. The rest charged. Turrets opened fire. Bright blue flashes lit the forest. James stood at the top window, aiming carefully. 1 down, then another. But they were smart. They spread out, climbed over the outer wall, and slipped through weak spots in the defense. By the time James ran to the lower floor, 3 had entered. He met them in the hallway. The first hunter leapt at him. Claws sharp, eyes glowing. James rolled, fired once, blast to the chest, gone. Second one threw a spear. James blocked it with his shield, but the impact knocked him off his feet. The third came fast, too fast. James fired, missed. The alien raised his blade, but Sarah appeared from the side tunnel and struck the hunter with a shock baton. He dropped, twitching. James stared at her. "You were supposed to be in the lower chamber." "I told you I wouldn't leave you alone," she said, chest heaving. The 2 stood side by side, watching as more hunters began to breach the outer walls. James handed her a second blaster. "You remember how to use it?" She nodded. "Point and shoot." "Good enough." They fought together, back to back. In the corridor, near the door where her children hid. Sarah moved with fire in her eyes. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting her family. Now James was injured, a cut across his side, bruises on his arm, but he didn't stop. They took down 2 more, then silence, only smoke, and the sound of Sarah's breathing. "Did we win?" she asked. James checked the cameras. 1 more hunter, larger, heavier, wearing armor, the leader. He was almost at the main door. James turned to Sarah. "Get inside, now. I'm not leaving you. This one's different. Please, go." "For the kids." Sarah hesitated, then ran back to the children. James turned and waited. The metal door exploded open. The final hunter stepped inside, twice the size of the others. "You are the human who protects the shame," the alien growled. "You will die for her." James raised his rifle. "You talk too much." The hunter charged. James fired. The shots bounced off the armor. They clashed. Blade against shield, fist against wall. James was thrown against a pillar. Pain shot through. His ribs, he was losing. But then, another blast rang out. The hunter stumbled. Sarah stood behind him, rifle shaking in her hands. "Get away from him," she screamed. The hunter turned to attack her. James used his last strength, grabbed his sidearm, and fired into the back of the hunter's neck, the one unprotected spot. The alien collapsed, dead. Later, the outpost was quiet again. James lay on, a med bed bandaged. Sarah sat beside him, holding his hand. "You said you'd come back," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Told you I keep my promises." Rilo and Luma climbed up on the bed. Luma kissed James on the cheek. "Papa is strong," she giggled. James looked at Sarah. She looked at him. In that quiet moment, nothing else mattered. They had survived. Together. A place called home. The sun rose slowly behind the mountains. The forest, once filled with fire and fear, now rested in quiet peace. Inside the outpost, a soft warmth had begun to fill the once cold metal halls. James limped down the hallway, his arm still in a sling. The med gel helped, but he felt every bruise and cut from the fight. Still, his heart was calm. They were safe. Sarah stood in the kitchen area, an old storage room James had turned into a cooking space. She stirred a small pot, steam rising as a sweet scent filled the room. "Morning," James said, smiling. She turned and smiled back. "You should be resting." "I rested enough," he said. "And I smelled something good." Sarah chuckled. "It's something we used to make on cold days. A meal from my world. Soft roots. Sweet broth. I mixed some human ingredients too. I hope it works." James sat at the table. "If it smells this good, it works." Luma came running in, her bare feet light on the floor. She was wearing one of James's old shirts, now tied like a dress. "Look, Papa," she said proudly, showing a small drawing she made. It was a picture of all four of them, Sarah, James, Luma, and Rilo, holding hands in front of the outpost. James took it gently. "You made this?" Luma nodded. "We're a family now, right?" James looked at Sarah. Her smile was soft, her eyes shining. "Yes," James said. "We're a family." That afternoon, James took them on a walk outside. The forest felt alive. Again, not with danger but with color and calm. Rilo walked beside his mother, holding her hand. He was still recovering, but he was stronger now. His legs didn't shake anymore. They reached a small hilltop behind the outpost. The view stretched far. Trees, cliffs, sky. "This is our home now," James said. Sarah looked around. "I never imagined I would live in a place like this. I thought we'd be running forever." "You don't have to run anymore." She nodded, then paused. "Do humans do this often?" she asked. "Do what?" "Take in strangers, protect the weak, risk their lives for people they barely know." James looked at her. "Not always, but some of us do. And I saw something in you that others didn't." She turned to him. "What?" "You didn't break," he said. "Even when they left you to die. You protected your kids with everything you had. You deserve more than just survival." Sarah blinked slowly. "You gave me more than survival. You gave me hope." James hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out something small, a silver ring, simple, old, from his mother's things long ago. Sarah stared at it. "What is this?" "It's a symbol," James said quietly. "On my world, when someone gives this, it means they want to be together, as one." Sarah didn't speak, not right away. Then she took the ring and slowly slid it onto her finger. "I don't understand all human traditions," she whispered, "but I understand this feeling." James smiled. "So, does that mean yes?" She nodded. "It means yes." Back inside the outpost, the children danced in circles when they heard the news. "Mama and Papa are really Mama and Papa now." Lumasang Rilo laughed for the first time in days. James watched them, a warmth blooming inside his chest. This was more than survival, more than rescue. It was belonging. That night, Sarah sat beside James on the rooftop. Stars filled the sky. More. stars than she had ever seen. She leaned against his shoulder. Will they come again? James thought for a moment. Maybe, maybe not. But if they do, we'll be ready, she said. They sat in silence, letting the stars speak for them. Down below, Luma and Rilo slept peacefully. Their small breaths echoed softly in the room that used to be cold and forgotten. Now it was filled with laughter, warm food, love, a home. Husband, father. A year had passed since the night James and Sarah made their stand at the outpost. The scars on James's body had faded, but not the memories. Still, every time he looked at Luma's chalk drawings on the wall, or the way Rilo ran through the hallway laughing, he knew every wound had been worth it. The outpost no longer felt like an old war shelter. It felt like a home. Luma's tiny hands had decorated every wall with flowers, stars, and stick figure families. Rilo had a small shelf with toys James had carved himself. Sarah had turned the kitchen into a warm space filled with scents James never knew existed before she came into his life. Outside, the seasons changed. But inside, there was always warmth. James walked out into the forest trail one morning to cut wood. He liked the silence here. It reminded him how far they had come. He wasn't a soldier anymore. Not just a scavenger. Not just a wanderer. He was a husband. He was a father. And somehow, in the middle of a war-torn galaxy, that meant more than anything else. As he chopped wood, he noticed something in the sky. A flicker of movement. A drone. Civilian model. Not a hunter. He followed its path back to the outpost. Sarah was outside, hanging herbs to dry. She looked up as James returned. Everything all right? She asked. He nodded slowly. Just a drone. From the colony settlement. Must have scanned our area by accident. Sarah frowned. Will they come here? James paused. Maybe. 3 days later they did. A shuttle landed near the base of the hill. Not a warship. Not hostile. Just a single diplomat and a few guards. James stepped outside alone. The diplomat raised his hands. We're not here to fight. We're from the Central Human Colony Authority. Your beacon came online last week. James nodded. What do you want? We're rebuilding, the man said. We're offering families like yours a place in the new colonies. Safety, fresh start, education, a future. James stayed quiet, then asked, even for alien families? The man hesitated. We weren't sure. But when we saw the scans, your family, it changed things. Your story is spreading. People are talking about you. James's eyes narrowed. Talking about us? The man smiled. The human who defended the unwanted. The alien widow who found strength. The children who were left to die, but lived. You've become a story of hope. James looked back toward the outpost. Sarah stood in the doorway holding Luma and Rilo's hands. He turned back to the diplomat. We already have a home. But the galaxy could use more people like you, the man said, to teach others how to live together, not just survive. James didn't answer right away. He walked back to Sarah. They want to take us to the new colonies, he said. Give the kids school, you, medicine, me, a chance to speak, to help others like us. Sarah looked unsure. We've finally found peace here. I know, James said softly. But maybe peace isn't enough. Maybe it's time to help others find what we have. She looked into his eyes, then slowly nodded. 1 week later, the family stepped onto the shuttle, not as fugitives, not as beggars, but as a family. Sarah wore a soft gray cloak, her ring shining in the light. James carried Rilo, while Luma held a drawing she had made for the pilot of their outpost under the stars. As the shuttle lifted off, Sarah leaned her head on James's shoulder. Do you think we'll always be welcome? She asked. James held her hand tightly. Not always. But we'll always have each other. And that's enough. Years passed. James would go on to speak before the Human-Alien Unity Council. Sarah would become a teacher, helping orphaned alien children learn Earth, language and art. Rilo would grow into a strong and gentle boy, brave like his father, and Luma. Luma would write a book, the title, The Human Who Gave Us a Name. And deep inside that book, on the very first page, she wrote, "We were broken, left behind, but one human didn't walk past us. He became our protector, then our father. And when he gave my mother a ring, he didn't just marry her, he married all of us. In a galaxy full of fear, one human man had chosen love, and that made all the difference.